Hi, welcome back to another episode of Unscripted. My name is Emily Rosca, and I'm the managing editor at The Phoenix.
And I'm Lucas Neighbor, and I'm an A&E editor at The Phoenix.
In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about Rian Johnson's latest feature, Knives Out.
I would like to request that you all stay until the investigation is completed.
What? Can we ask why? Has something changed?
No.
No, it hasn't changed, or no, we can't ask.
I'm gonna live till I die.
You think one of his family Walt killed? Is that what you're suggesting?
Then I cry. I'm gonna take the
You all love twisting the knife into one another.
Knives Out stars Daniel Craig, Ana de Armas, Chris Hemsworth, and
No, not Hemsworth.
Chris Evans, not same thing.
Not at all. I mean, they both play in, Marvel
movies.
films.
They're not very similar, but Chris Evans and a million other people. Don Johnson is in it, and so the movie follows Benoit Blanc, a Southern private investigator who is investigating the murder/suicide of Harlan Thrombey. Harlan Thrombey is a very rich old mystery novel author. And he's built this huge empire onto that, and his family's game business? No, publishing business.
The publishing,
Yeah. And so when Harlan finishes celebrating his 85th birthday, he goes upstairs and plays a board game with his maid, played by Ana de Armas. Her name is Maria.
Nurse.
Maid/nurse. She's described as his friend and his caretaker, and she, you see her bringing him food and stuff like that. And they're playing board games, and the next morning he's discovered dead with his throat slit.
So the movie starts out with the two detectives and the private investigator all in a room, and they bring in each of the family members to describe their remembering of the events of the night. And all of them are slightly different, as they each kind of leave out the details of the more embarrassing parts of their night, because they each had an interaction with the grandfather, and it was his 85th birthday. And so it kind of set it up in that way, which was really nice. And it was funny because in each scene, or each of the characters interviews I forget his name because he's such a funky name, but the detective.
Benoit Blanc.
Benoit Blanc, he hits the piano key at one point, and I want to say it's when he feels like they're lying, or I don't know if it's just a random tactic to get their attention, because before he does that, they're unaware that he's even sitting in the room.
Right. I believe that he hits the key, and I've only seen it once, but I believe that he hits the key when he's heard everything he needs to hear from them. Because all he's trying to do is place the events of the night in that scene.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because, when we see that opening scene, which is one of the funniest things in the movie, as each person tells a lie and then the next person corrects their lie before telling the next lie.
Yeah.
That whole scene, he's kind of portrayed as this very mysterious, kind of threatening presence, and you think he's gonna be, kind of a typical Daniel Craig role. He's known for the serious, angry Bond. I was expecting him to be kind of that based on that scene, and then I believe it's Toni Collette's character.
She's so good.
She is. She plays the stepdaughter whose husband died, but she just remained in the family even though he was the brother of the rest of the siblings. And so...
Well, she was mooching off of all of them, quite literally.
Well, yeah, it comes out that she stole, Harlan was paying for her daughter's, Catherine Langford's character, Megan's?
I think so.
Megan's tuition, but Toni Collette's character was taking checks and also calling Harlan Thrombey's accountant and asking for the tuition check. So she was taking double to mooch off of them, but she's really not just mooching off of them, she's not really a part of the family anymore. No one really likes her, but she's just oblivious to that fact. And anyway, she's kind of a ditz, and she's the one who just stops them, and she's like, wait a minute, who are you? That's the first introduction we get to Benoit Blanc. And then, there's that great thing with the New Yorker article. He's the last gentleman detective.
Oh, yeah.
And how all the family members that have heard of him, or it starts out with, she's like, yeah, I read a New Yorker article about you. And then Tony Collette's character is like, yeah, I think I saw a tweet about a New Yorker article about you. And that stuff's just great, but it's really in that scene that we transition and we see both sides of the movie. It's like this very, like, kind of intense, like very twisty thriller and like whodunit mystery, but at the same time, it's just really, really funny and really offbeat. And Benoit Blanc is like both of those things, you know? He's kind of encapsulates like the tone of the movie.
Yeah, the movie had, as I guess most murder mysteries do, kind of had me like guessing the entire time, and I feel like I like held my breath until the very end and didn't even like realize that I did, because you find out how the grandfather died like quite like
Early.
really early.
Yeah.
But you know that it can't possibly be exactly what is shown, because obviously then there's no movie. It did happen the way it was shown, but there was like more to it. Wait, no, no, there's like stuff revealed.
Right, for sure. Maria originally thinks she accidentally killed Harlan by switching his morphine with his actual medication. She's been giving him morphine for pain management and to help him go to sleep at night, but she also gives him real medication that he needs to survive. And the dosage for that is much higher than for morphine. So she realizes that she flipped the bottles and gave him too much morphine, and then he, you know, is about to overdose and die, and he really quickly convinces her that she should pretend that it wasn't her and stage a murder.
Well, because he didn't want to go to the hospital, and she didn't have like the pills or whatever that were needed to like offset it.
Right. Well, she doesn't have the she doesn't have the antidote, but it's not that he doesn't want to go to the hospital, it's that they won't get there in time. So he says, you've already killed me, we might as well protect you, because he knows that her family's undocumented. And so they stage this elaborate murder, and it works, and it's the plot of the movie. But like you said, we learn that very early. You know, that's the first big twist, but the final twist is that Ransom, Chris Evans' character, Harlan's grandson? Yeah, Harlan's grandson, Ransom, switched her bottles and removed the antidote from her bag because he assumed that she would just take the fall for it, and that by killing him, it would be like negligence on her part instead of Ransom having to murder him, and then he would get a large part of the inheritance.
Which he knew he wasn't going to get.
Because his grandpa had just taken him out. Correct. The interesting thing about all of that is something that Rian Johnson kind of said, not to flex, when I got to
I was just
interview
saying,
him.
you have to talk about that.
Yeah, after the Chicago International Film Festival screening of it, he talked a little bit about exactly what you said, how when you reveal the death, you have to make sure that there's something that works, you know, something that keeps viewers interested. And so what he said was, the point of that is to kind of invert the whole process. And so by giving us the killer's perspective, but not making her an intentional killer, making it like an accidental thing, something that she doesn't know about, and just originally what she thought was negligence, he sort of inverts the murder mystery thing, and all the functions of a whodunit thriller become the antagonist of the movie. So at no point are we rooting against Benoit Blanc solving the case, because he's a compelling character in his own right, but at the same time, we don't want Maria to be, you know, to face the consequences for this. So merely like watching the functions of the plot play out is the antagonist. Like the whole movie's kind of difficult to watch in a good way. It's kind of intense and like very like scary, but you're not rooting for or against either of those characters, and you don't really even suspect Ransom because, you know, you think you know that Maria did it.
I think the highlight of this film for me was the dialogue. It was very witty the entire time. I unfortunately can't think of examples, but there were parts. I guess what I loved was Daniel Craig's accent in this film, because he had a very like molasses southern drawl, and it's not what I expected from him when he like first opened his mouth in the movie. And so that, with just like everything that comes out of his mouth, is just, I think, hilarious.
So you said that you didn't really remember like examples of the witty dialogue in the movie. There
were definitely some times where I like truly laughed out loud. I just wish I remembered or wrote them down.
Yeah, it definitely is something that you need to watch multiple times, because there's just so much good stuff just in the dialogue. But there's one line that Michael Shannon in the Q&A for the film after the screening at the International Film Festival, he confirmed that it was improvised after, I believe, Rian Johnson just, you know, was commending him on how good of an improviser he was. And the family's fighting about like the Trump presidency or something like that. And Walt is just freaking out. And Walt is Michael Shannon's character. And there's this line right at the end, like right before it cuts to the next scene, where you can just kind of hear Walt, like in the background of the scene, scream, "I'm not eating one iota of shit," as Ransom tells him to eat shit. And it's just a great line. But there's also, Benoit Blanc has this monologue about donuts and donut holes that goes on like entirely too long and is just so funny and so poorly timed. It's like, that's one of my favorite things, is that early on, like, Craig is like very patient as Benoit Blanc. He's very like, he's smoking his giant cigar and like thinking about everything and like thinking through all the clues. And then by the end, he's like freaking out. He's just screaming and like running around all over the place, and he's so excited to crack the case. And he will just randomly, as they're like in the middle of car chases or driving to like the penultimate conclusion of the film, and he's just going through like his bad prose in his mind out loud about like what he thinks of the case. And he's got a great Gravity's Rainbow joke in there, which is just really good. And yeah, the dialogue's just really special throughout the movie.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so good, because it's like a thriller, but it's also a comedy and a drama, all like laced into one. Phenomenal though. Like, I left the theater and I think everyone in there was just like laughing. There was clapping at the end, which, like, I'm not a theater clapper, but it happened. Not for me, but from other people. And also just like such an A-list cast. I love Michael Shannon and Toni Collette and obviously Daniel Craig, but they were all phenomenal.
And Catherine Langford from 13 Reasons Why.
She didn't have like the biggest role.
No, she's kind of just there as background a little bit, but she's really good and really funny.
Can we talk about the like 100-year-old like grandma?
Yeah.
She was Harlan's dad. Or
Harlan's mother. Oh man.
She's a pretty crucial part in the mystery, because so after Harlan took Marta, not Maria, right?
Yeah, Marta.
Through all of the steps on like how to get away with murder, basically.
Right.
She like has to climb up the trellis to get into the attic where Harlan's like studio is, through this like secret window. And as she like does it, or I think on her way down, she like jumps onto the ground, and the grandma is just like standing there like a bat, like looking out, and she goes, "Ransom, like, is that you? Or you're back again?" Yeah. And she thought that no one understood like what that meant until the end, because as it turns out, was Ransom who like flipped the bottle, so he had to climb the trellis at one point. But then she helps Benoit Blanc later on, where he's so cordial with her as he just sits there. He's like, "I have all day, like, when you're ready, I know you have something to tell me." And then I guess at one point she does.
I don't think she does.
Then how did he figure it out?
At least not there, not in that scene.
No, not in the movie. We don't see it, but at some point.
Yeah, I like to think that it just kind of came up another time. Yeah, that scene is great. No, there's just so much to talk about with this movie, and it's one of those things that, like, even with spoilers, you don't want to get into everything that happens, because it's just not something that is as enjoyable if you know all the details. Like, even knowing the like events of the plot, I don't think would take away from all the intimate details, but it's this movie that's very, very rooted in old sensibilities and old styles, in terms of being a murder mystery and a whodunit, and like this old money family with this very ornate set, the house that Harlan lives in, and but it's a very modern film in the way that it talks about things like illegal immigration and drug abuse in middle to upper middle class and rich families, like, and things like it addresses topics like white supremacy in teenagers and things like liberal college students who aren't actually liberal when it comes down to it. Like, it attacks all these different key points in this very old school, like very classically shot movie, and it's just really, really special in that way.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it again when it's out in theaters later on.
Definitely.
That was our commentary on Knives Out. Thank you guys for watching. For backlog episodes, they can be found on the Loyola Phoenix websites as well as our YouTube channel.